Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Granderson from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and happy to welcome you to the 21st ACEEE Summer Study on Energy Efficiency in Buildings. Our theme this year is efficiency, the core of a clean energy future, and that's in recognition of our industry's rapidly evolving ecosystem. Our activities are ranging from resilience and DERs to virtual batteries and grid integration, and lately to the pressing needs associated with airborne infectious disease transmission. So whatever the surrounding goals for expansion of clean energy systems and services, we recognize that efficient buildings are central to our success. Now, this is our first virtual summer study, and we're so grateful to be convening with all of you as a community this week. We're excited for the continuation of our energy efficiency and equity panel, particularly in light of our society's mass awakening to the inequities that our infrastructure, civil systems, and institutions are both founded on and perpetuating.
Hi everybody, I'm Diana Hunt and I am with Oak Ridge National Lab, and with Jessica, I'm co-chairing this year's summer study. So we are pleased to introduce in this summer study a new panel session on scaling whole building retrofits. And also to acknowledge the ongoing pandemic, we included informal sessions that explore the intersection of buildings and COVID-19. We are grateful to the many volunteers that contributed countless hours to the success of the summer study, especially the panel leaders, paper authors, and the peer reviewers. And the coordination of these volunteers and their numerous tasks was made possible through the guidance from the ACEEE staff, and in particular, Steve Nadell, Rebecca Luneta, Jennifer Ammon, Naomi Baum, Kenny Koch, Lynn Powell, Emma Runch, and Kim Matador. Also, we want to thank all of you for joining us in this virtual summer study. And now I'm going to go through some housekeeping items. So first of all, your screen or the screen in which you are joining this conference is customizable. So feel free to adjust the sizes of the windows and also to try the different buttons that are at the bottom of the screen that will give you more functions. The presentations that you will see throughout this conference can be downloaded as PDFs from the presentation list in the menu. Also, in all of these presentations, the attendees will be in listen-only mode, but you can submit questions through the Q&A box. And at the end of each of the presentations, we will answer these questions. All the presentations will be available on demand viewing within a few days on the Engagement Hub. And last but not least, later this afternoon, after all the panel sessions, we will have the informal sessions and social times. And these will be offered through Zoom links, and you can register to these just like you did to the various panel sessions. So next, we want to thank our gold sponsors. These include E4 The Future, Energize Connecticut, Eversource, National Grid, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, Southern California Gas Company, and United Illuminating. We also want to thank our silver sponsors, COMET, the Energy Coalition, Energy Trust of Oregon, Johnson Controls, the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, or NEA, ON Semiconductor, Samsung, and TRC. And lastly, we also want to thank our bronze sponsors, Guidehouse, the New York Power Authority, Opinion Dynamics, and the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, or VEEC. So now I want to introduce Penny McLean, Connor, who will give us an overview of ACEEE's accomplishments in the past 40 years, and who will also go over what's coming up next. Penny's Chief Customer Officer and Senior Vice President of Customer Group for Eversource Energy. She's responsible for providing Eversource's 3.5 million electric and gas customers with high-quality customer service and delivering a cost-effective portfolio of electric and gas energy efficiency programs. Penny is a recognized thought leader in the utility industry with over 30 years of experience, and she has a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from North Carolina State University and is a registered professional engineer. With that, Penny.
Thank you so much, Diana, and welcome to everyone. I am so excited to be with all of you virtually today and to talk a little bit about where ACEEE has been and, more importantly, where we are going. So ACEEE is a nonprofit organization, and it was founded in 1980, 40 years ago. We have an amazing group, a team of 60 folks that really do all the research, and that's really what we're grounded in, is providing research and data information. Importantly, our mission is to advance energy efficiency, advance the policies, the programs, the technologies, and behaviors around energy efficiency. And importantly, funding that we receive for our work comes from government agencies, contracts, conferences, and corporate memberships. So to take a little bit of a great team at ACEEE, I do want to recognize that we also have a board of directors that supports the organization, guides its mission, and I think that's really what is so powerful as we think about celebrating our 40th anniversary. Our board of directors met 2 years ago in a seminar, and we were doing strategic planning, and we all felt this urgent need to do more, that we needed to double down. And as we reflected on the great work that had happened over the past 40 years, ACEEE, founded in 1980, built off the crisis, the oil crisis, where the solutions were just drill for more oil. But a group of very forward-thinking leaders from academia, from government, from private organizations got together and said, you know, the better path. We can reduce the energy and use it more wisely. And ACEEE was founded in 1980 with a grant of $100,000, and Carl Blumstein, who was so generous to mentor me for so many years, advised me that they nursed that first $100,000 for 3 years. And look at us today. We are 100 times larger with a $10 million annual budget. So our board thought, we look forward. What can we do now going forward? Can we scale again? Can we grow? Can we double, triple, or grow 100 times? Be a billion-dollar organization. Wouldn't that be amazing in 40 years? But you and I all know that we have a great, great opportunity ahead of us. During this past 40 years, we made great progress. We doubled our energy productivity. We cut our energy use in half. And importantly, for Americans, per capita use on their energy bill dropped by $2,000. But we know that there is more. Next slide. So as we think about where we're at, climate change is bringing unfathomable harm to our planet. It is an existential threat. I now have young children. As I think about 2050, my goodness, my youngest is going to be 50 years old. We've got to do more and faster. So our board in that strategic planning session developed a new call to action, one that was more aggressive, one that moves us quicker towards our goals of achieving reductions and transformative climate reductions. So that call to action calls us to rapidly scale our energy efficiency work and slash greenhouse gas reductions. Next slide. And that we will do so equitably and cost effectively. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about that. And as our board thought about 2050 and setting this aggressive call to action, we said, you know what? We need markers along the way to tell us and define our path. So we identified 2030 and a set of goals in 2030 that serve as markers, that serve to define what we need to do today that puts us on the path to achieve our goals in energy efficiency. So I want to close with a little bit of an overview on those markers we have in place. Next slide. So by 2030, what we have goals to do is to double our rate of building retrofits, and that we will achieve zero net energy homes and 25% of new homes. Already exciting work beginning at Eversource here in this space in New England, and I'm sure across the country. Electrification of transportation is here and going to increase. We believe that. So we want to hike the fuel efficiency of new vehicles by at least 50% and achieve a 20% market penetration for electric vehicles. We know industrial greenhouse gas emissions is a concern. We want to achieve reducing it by a third. And we want to do quintuple, 5 times, a 5-fold increase in efficiency for buildings occupied by low-income households. So it is aggressive, but these 2030 goals now serve to define the initiatives we need to take place over the next decade to achieve them. Next slide. So I'm proud to represent the board. I am the chair of ACEEE, one of the reasons I'm here with you today. And I want to thank our entire board for their passion, for their commitment, and for setting up and achieving this call to action that we will now work on together achieving. We also pointed out, have set a halfway there fund. Many folks have already supported. Our entire board has supported last year and has already supported again. They've renewed their commitments on the halfway there fund. But this is because we know going forward, and you'll hear more about this coming up, but that energy efficiency alone can take us halfway to our climate goals by 2050. So we really have to maximize this low-cost opportunity. This really is what makes sense, is using energy efficiency in the most important manner. So we urge you to consider joining all of us on this halfway there fund, providing whatever support you can, because our work needs to scale and grow aggressively so that we can achieve our climate goals. And with that, I will turn it back over to Diana. Thank you all.
Thank you, Penny. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our plenary speaker, Gina McCarthy, who became the President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Resources Defense Council, or as many of us know it, NRDC, in January of 2020. And now she's leading more than 700 attorneys, scientists, advocates, and policy experts. Previously, Gina served as the 13th administration of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and as Assistant Administrator for the Office of Air and Radiation under President Obama. Her leadership led to significant federal, state, and local actions on critical issues related to the environment, economy, energy, and transportation. And as part of this work, Gina signed the Clean Power Plan, which set the first national standards for reducing carbon emissions from existing power plants. In summary, Gina has been a leading advocate for smart, successful strategies to protect public health and the environment for more than 30 years. Gina holds a master's degree in environmental health engineering and planning and policy from Tufts University and a bachelor's in social anthropology from the University of Massachusetts at Boston. Gina is not able to join us today live, but we will be playing a pre-recorded presentation. And afterwards, we will answer questions that you have been typing in the chat box. So with that, let's watch Gina's message.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me at this extremely energy efficient version of your annual conference. If any group knows how to do that, I'm sure it's you. You know, since 1980, ACEEE has stood at the forefront of our national mission to become the world leader in energy efficiency. For those 4 decades, our economy's grown 10 times faster than our energy use, making our homes healthier, more comfortable, and more affordable places to live, giving our economy a leg up in the global marketplace, creating millions of good-paying American jobs, helping to cut the carbon pollution that's driving the global climate crisis, as well as quantifying these gains through data-filled reports that inform all our work. What an impressive record of achievement, with the promise of many more gains to come, because the supply of energy efficiency is limitless. It's bounded only by our willingness to look harder and to use the power of our collective imagination together. That's why we should be all sort of hanging out, sipping wine, and celebrating together. But that happens in normal times, and there's nothing normal about these times. In every corner of this country, every city, county, and town, there's an epic national reckoning that's taking place over the urgent need for racial justice, for equity, and for economic opportunity. And in more than 2,000 places all across the country, millions and millions of people have taken to the streets to demand an end to the systemic racism and the structural inequality that have burned for centuries at our nation's core. This is not some passing moment, and it shouldn't be. We're living through historic times that will change us as a nation for all time if we work hard, and we have to work hard. And all of us who are connected here have a vital role to play, because energy efficiency can be a force to advance equity and justice. It can help us build a healthier tomorrow, especially for Black communities and other people of color, and for those living in poverty, because they are always the hardest hit by the impacts of pollution. It can open up economic opportunities because it has the power to make housing both affordable and to create jobs in every community in America. It can be a force for environmental and climate justice by reducing our reliance on dirty power sources while we transition to a clean energy economy. And we can make energy efficiency happen. We know how to deliver it in ways that advance smart, fair housing policies, in ways that build and bring job opportunities, and so much more. Energy efficiency can, if we're smart, help fuel broader efforts to change some of the most long-standing institutional and structural inequalities that our country just cannot afford to tolerate any longer. Look, I don't have to tell you how badly our country has dropped the ball on the coronavirus pandemic, or the price we're all paying for our failure to act. More than 165,000 Americans have died. More than 16 million are out of work. And as many as 30 million people could be evicted from their homes. And economists, those happy-go-lucky economists, they're telling us we're headed for a deep and prolonged recession that could take us years to dig out from under. And like perhaps nothing else in recent memory, this pandemic has also laid bare the unacceptable disparities between the health of Black people and white people in this country. Black people are more than twice as likely to die from COVID-19 as white people, according to the Color of Coronavirus Project, which has been tracking the data since April. And Black people are more likely to work at jobs they can't do from their homes. So guess what? They're more likely to contract the disease in the first place. And they're less likely to have the health care insurance and the access to regular, good quality health care that would enable them to confront the illness the same way that most of us on this Zoom call can confront it. And they're more likely to suffer from pre-existing health conditions that make them more vulnerable to the ravages of this deadly virus. And part of the reasons for these higher mortality and morbidity rates is exposure to pollution from the burning of fossil fuels for energy. We have known for decades that energy pollution kills, and it's not an equal opportunity killer. Air pollution causes and aggravates lung and cardiovascular diseases. It weakens immune systems, and it causes other illnesses that make it harder to resist the virus. And we also know that people of color, indigenous people, Latino people, and other people of color pay such a dear price in terms of their health when homes aren't properly insulated, when moist air breeds mold, and when they're forced to pay such a high percentage of their monthly earnings just to heat and light their homes that many people simply can't afford. And they don't get the health care they need, and they don't put food on their tables as a result. But energy efficiency really can help, but it's only going to be as helpful as it needs to be if it's available to everyone, including those most in need. That's why NRDC works to deliberately combine our energy efficiency work with our racial equity work in energy and housing systems, especially through work on our Energy Efficiency for All program. Through this project, we work alongside national partners like Elevate Energy, the Energy Foundation, and the National Housing Trust, as well as partners across 13 different states. That's how we help to unite people from diverse sectors and homes to bring energy efficiency and water efficiency to multifamily affordable housing, low-income communities, and people of color. Through this work, we're helping people in underinvested communities to benefit from the health, environmental, and economic savings that come from energy and water efficiency. For example, we work alongside community groups to make sure they have a meaningful voice in energy decisions that affect their communities. We promote energy efficiency investments in affordable multifamily housing in low-income communities, and we work to ensure the use of non-toxic building materials in home improvements. This work is hard, but it matters. It saves lives, and that's why it needs to be available to everyone. But that means funding. Sufficient funding to make up for decades of neglect that has resulted in so many buildings in low-income communities falling into disrepair. It requires programs designed with the input of people who live in these communities. And we need to make sure that we have their voices heard so we're providing what they truly need. And it has to be delivered by people who live in the neighborhoods if we ever hope to ensure that communities see the benefits from the job opportunities that come with these investments. We should no longer tolerate a situation where some communities or some states or regions in our country are advantaged by the benefits of energy efficiency while large swaths of society are left behind. We need energy efficiency, not for a few. We need energy efficiency for all. You know, as we know, one of the broadest, most pernicious, and most damaging measures of racial inequality in this country have been and remain the economic opportunity gap. How can you possibly prepare a person for economic opportunity in a complex modern society unless they have a roof over their heads, access to nutritious food? How about clean air to breathe and clean water to drink, or green spaces to run around in a good school for their kids to attend, a doctor to see when they need one, and resources to get some job training or to go to college? Did you know that the average Black family in America has a net wealth totaling just $17,000? 1/10 of the wealth of the average white family. Maybe you didn't know this exact number, but I guess it's not surprising to you. But it is shameful and unsettling, and it's unfair, and it has to change. And while that will take a lot of work, I firmly believe that energy efficiency can help drive that change. Before the pandemic hit, the energy efficiency industry employed more than 2.6 million people who were going to work every day, helping us to become more efficient in our cars, workplaces, and homes. And these jobs were growing twice as fast as the job growth overall. But then the pandemic hit, and more than 400,000 of these energy efficiency jobs have disappeared, throwing people out of work across the country in every state. And these people need urgent relief. So as we look to get our economy back on its feet, let's make sure we fight for a recovery that's strong, durable, and broad-based. That means one that invests in energy efficiency and clean energy. That's an investment that will continue to pay big dividends in so many ways. You know, a new analysis by NRDC's sister organization, Environmental Entrepreneurs, or E2, found that we can generate $3.30 worth of economic activity for every single dollar of public support, as long as we provide it to energy efficiency, renewable energy, and grid modernization. $100 billion federal investments in clean energy creates more than 860,000 jobs, mostly in efficiency, renewable energy, and grid modernization. These are good paying jobs for electricians, for carpenters, for steel workers, for insulation installers, for engineers, and for others in every community in our country. And it can mean cost savings for companies across every sector who really need to cut costs in order to survive. This country spends $1.3 trillion every year on energy. That's nearly $4,000 per person. So if we cut energy consumption 10%, we can save $130 billion a year. That's money that keeps our assembly lines humming and our workers on the job. It helps our schools and hospitals find ways to cope in tough times. It keeps our mom and pop stores open. It can free up funds so cash-strapped state and local governments can provide the essential services and protect our safety and our health. And it can help bring down the cost to the most vulnerable communities who are hit the hardest by this pandemic and simply don't have the wherewithal to cope with it. They cannot cope and be resilient the way that most of us on this call enjoy. You know, if we tailor energy efficiency assistance right and implement it correctly and link it to job training and direct it to where it's needed most, we're going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs. We're going to help get our economy back on its feet, all the while bringing economic opportunity to the people who need it most. And at the same time, we'll be taking a huge step forward to confront our climate crisis. I know we've already talked about the ways that fossil fuel production and pollution inflict disproportionate harm on communities of color. Well, these same communities spend a larger share of their earnings to pay for the energy they need to cool their homes in summer, warm them in winter, and keep the lights on year-round. And it is these very same people who are most likely to live on the front lines of climate harm, where they bear a disproportionate share of the burden from rising seas, withering drought, blistering heat, raging storms, floods, and fires. So if we want to invest in climate solutions that can really make a difference now, well, think energy efficiency. It's the fastest and cheapest way to cut our carbon footprint. Science tells us, you remember science, that if we want to have a fighting chance to avoid the worst impacts of climate catastrophe, we have to cut the carbon pollution from burning fossil fuels in half by 2030, and we have to eliminate or offset the rest by 2050. We have to move fast. We have no choice. We have to do this, and we're gonna do it. Not because we care about the planet, because we care about our family's health and our kids' future. Climate solutions like energy efficiency keep our families healthier. They make our communities more prosperous and our country more secure. And it helps to build a more just and equitable society. So what the heck are we waiting for? Well, at NRDC, we're doing the analysis to show exactly how we get there through smart, substantial investments in a clean energy economy. Specifically, 3 fundamental paths. The first, electric vehicles and charging stations. Second, clean, renewable energy from wind and solar. And third, a smart, reliable national electric grid wedded to a modern energy storage system. But at the foundation of each pathway is, guess what? Equitable energy efficiency solutions. So what does that mean? It means doing more with less energy as we power our cars, our workplaces, and our homes, and decarbonize buildings, while focusing in the communities that need these solutions most and should get those solutions first. What does all that get us? Well, actually, it results in improving our quality of life and a healthier and more sustainable future for all of us. Without a doubt, the fastest, cheapest way to cut our carbon footprint is to invest in energy efficiency. It's what my colleague David Goldstein has called in a book, Invisible Energy. And yet, its benefits are totally clear. And guess what? It never runs out. So to win the fight against climate change and climate injustice, we're going to have to do it all and do it everywhere. Renewable energy, electrification of transportation and buildings, smart grid and storage. But the single most important thing we can do and do now is to never stop pressing forward with the energy efficiency gains that have done so much to strengthen our economy, that has cut our energy bills and slashed carbon pollution for the past 40 years. Look, I know times are hard right now. We're facing some huge challenges. We have 4 years of federal rollbacks of environmental protections, energy efficiency standards, research and development investments. And many of those standards, I have to say, were ones I helped to put in place, and yet I'm still standing. Yeah. Because in the 8 years I served in the EPA, in the 25 years I served in state and local governments, I learned something fundamental about this country. And that is that innovation, enterprise, new ideas, that does not come only or even mainly from Washington, D.C. It comes from the bottom up. It comes from people in communities. It comes from all of you. And nothing this administration has done or can do has dimmed the drive, the imagination, the gut-level determination across our country to find better, smarter, more equitable ways to harness our energy resources, to solve problems, and improve our lives. So I am hopeful, if not excited, about the opportunities ahead. And if I can be hopeful and excited, then you had best buck it up and move forward. At NRDC, we're partnering with states, cities, and utilities across the U.S. to make sure energy efficiency investments and innovation continue, despite all the dysfunction in Washington. And we're fighting in courts to stop those federal rollbacks. And we're winning 90% of the time. Because of you and the work you're doing, we'll be ready to move forward to restore and run with federal energy efficiency promotion when sound leadership returns quickly. And ACEEE has been laying the groundwork that will allow this to happen. For 4 decades and counting, they've given a visible reminder of the power of invisible energy. And I know NRDC and ACEEE's best work is far from behind us. In fact, it's dead ahead. We will get to the top of this pandemic. We will dig our way out of this recession. We will stand up to the threat of climate change, and we will build a healthier, more just, and equitable society for all, because we will work together. We remain the United States of America, and one of our great strengths of the energy efficiency movement is, in fact, that it reflects the big tent that is America. Yes, I mean all of you out there in your sweatpants and your pajama bottoms. So wake up and get busy. We have real work to do. And all you folks who work in states, cities, utility companies, the business community, labor unions, consumer advocacy, low-income and housing advocates, and the NGO communities, let's just step up. Let's work together and get busy. We have work together to do to make our cars, our homes, and our workplaces even more efficient. Look, times are difficult, but when the going gets tough, man, we have to get going. And that's what today is all about. So let's, even if it's remotely, get together, join hands as best we can, hunker down, and make sure that we are providing the kind of leadership we need at the time we need it most to use energy efficiency as a core strategy to address the systemic racism that we have been dealing with for centuries, and to build on the 40-year history that is ACEEE. Thank you very much. As I'm sure you all know, last month we lost John Lewis, a giant of the civil rights movement and the great-great-grandson of enslaved people in the United States of America. Through 6 decades, Congressman Lewis led with vision, courage, and moral certitude on the front lines of the struggle for civil rights and human dignity. He was beaten nearly to death. He was arrested 45 times. And through it all, he just kept right on marching, and he never grew weary. Just a few weeks before he died, he went to see the place where Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C. had the words "Black Lives Matter" painted on a city street directly in front of the White House. And he was astonished by what he saw. He said it's a very moving to see hundreds of thousands of people from all over America and around the world take to the streets to speak up, to speak out, and to get what I call good trouble, he said. And then he went on to say, there will be no turning back. I realize that I, and likely most of you, fall far short of the wisdom and the courage and humility of John Lewis. But we must do whatever we can to muster his tenacity, his stick-to-itiveness, and his faith in people. There is no way we can turn back the clock, and we shouldn't want to, because we have to build a clean and efficient energy future for all, a future that is healthier, more just, equitable, and sustainable. So thanks, ACEEE. Thanks to all of you. Let's roll up our sleeves and let's get to work.
So that was a very inspirational presentation from Gina. And with that, Keith Kennedy is going to help answer questions that the audience has about Gina's presentation. Keith is a Senior Director of the Climate and Clean Energy Program at NRDC, where she oversees advocacy at the state and regional level to accelerate progress on scaling up clean energy, including energy efficiency, renewable energy, transportation electrification, and building decarbonization, as well as creating and strengthening state carbon policies and markets. Kate has over 30 years of experience as an environmental and energy attorney and advocate, and she has taught environmental and clean energy classes at Vermont Law School, Yale Law School, and Fordham University School of Law. She's a graduate of Harvard Law School and Harvard College. With that, Kit, I will start then going over several of the questions that have been posted. Right, the first one is...
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So the first one is, a concerning narrative I've heard lately is that the health of occupants is far more important than the cost of increased energy use to increase ventilation and or add UV disinfection for COVID. It seems we might be trading long-term climate health for short-term human health. Any comments on this?
Thank you, Diana. And before I get to the first question, I just want to say kudos to ACEEE for Summer Study 2020 and for pulling it off in such great style despite the pandemic. And thank you, Diana, for moderating this session. And for me, Gina's speech was so rousing and inspiring. And I can tell from some of the comments that others felt it that way too. I am honored to be part of NRDC and to be part of this great energy efficiency movement. Gina is really sorry that she can't be here to answer the questions in person. She had a prior commitment. So I'm glad to stand in, but as a warning or disclaimer, while I also work at NRDC and while I also come from Boston, I could never claim to speak for Gina or to speak like Gina or in her voice. But I'll do my best to answer any questions based on my own role and experience. And finally, I want to say thank you to NRDC's great energy efficiency team, many of whom are part of this plenary and are going to be participating in or leading panel discussions and informal sessions for the last few days. And I know Gina is super proud of Team NRDC energy efficiency, and so am I. So just to go to that question, Diana, I think that's a really important question. And I think from my perspective, community health and public health and climate health are all the same issue and are all of paramount importance. So protecting our community's health is absolutely crucial, and we shouldn't accept any trade-offs. So we shouldn't accept short-term versus long-term trade-offs for community health. We do need, and we're seeing changes in energy use patterns during COVID. We know that homes need air conditioning and that there's a need for cooling during this summer, exacerbated, of course, by climate change trends. So when it comes to air conditioning, when it comes to ventilation, we have to make those uses as energy efficient as possible. And we also have to provide communities with those crucial tools. In my home state of New York State and New York City, there are some innovative programs to do so, and I think they're going on in other regions and states of the US as well. So community health is paramount. Let's not accept any trade-offs. Let's do what we need to do to protect community health in as efficient a way as possible so we can meet those longer-term climate goals as well.
All right, thank you for that answer. Here is the next question. How do we talk to our renewable friends who propose that energy efficiency is not needed to achieve a clean energy grid?
I think, again, it's a great question, and it goes to not accepting trade-offs. We need every clean energy solution that we have to be deployed as fast as possible and in an equitable manner. So we need to go big on energy efficiency. We need to go big on renewable energy, building and transportation electrification, and creating a stronger and more resilient grid. There's no trade-off one way or the other. And I will say many of the renewable energy trade groups and renewable energy companies whom I work with understand that we need energy efficiency as well as renewable energy, and we've got to get both sides of the equation right.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, the National Greenhouse Gases Inventory is led by transportation emissions. Please describe commitments to reduce vehicle miles traveled by both people and goods movement.
That's another great question. And we all know that the transportation sector now leads carbon pollution emissions in the United States. It has edged out the power sector as power plants have as the power sector has gotten cleaner and more renewable and more efficient over the last decade. So what do we have to do to solve the transportation carbon pollution problem? I think there are at least three main solutions. One of them is reducing vehicle miles traveled and making sure that our communities have better mobility options, improving public transportation. That's, of course, a crucial problem right now during the COVID pandemic, when so many urban public transportation systems are under such stress because of the dramatic drops in ridership. We also, of course, need to electrify transportation, not only light-duty vehicles, but heavy-duty vehicles. And we're making some great progress in that regard. And we also need to make our current fleet of cars more efficient. So those are the three big solutions in my mind, and of course there are many others also. So what is NRDC doing in this space? I'll mention a couple of things. Together with many of the folks participating in this conference, we are a mainstay of the American Cities Climate Challenge, where we and partners are working in 25 cities across the U.S. to help those cities stay on track with their Paris commitments and meet their climate goals. And many of those cities are doing a lot of great work on the transportation side around better mobility options, better bike lanes, more extensive bike lanes, better pedestrian access, as well as transportation electrification, and of course, going big on public transportation and getting the financing that we need for public transportation in place. So as Gina mentioned, a lot of these solutions are going to come from the bottom up, and those 25 cities and cities across the US are doing really great innovative work to green transportation. At the state level, the work that utility commissions and governors are doing on vehicle electrification and creating the infrastructure that we need, the charging station infrastructure that we need to accelerate vehicle electrification is also crucial. And finally, at the federal level, NRDC supported the Invest in America bill, which the House passed, which would, at the federal level, provide much needed funding and support for communities who want to reduce transportation carbon emissions. So there's much more to do in this area. It's a key area of focus. And I should also add, on the clean cars front, NRDC and many of our partners are fighting the Trump rollback of federal clean car standards and the effort to stop states from innovating in that area. We're litigating those issues. And as Gina mentioned, our track record in winning these cases against Trump rollbacks is very strong.
Great. For that, thank you for that information. The next question here is a little bit different, but relevant. So most existing buildings have the original poor performance windows built when the energy costs were low, and the builders didn't care about operating costs. So how do we address the cost of the deep retrofits that should include improvements to the windows and the building envelope, as well as energy efficient technologies?
Another really interesting question. And of course, windows and efficient windows are a big part of the puzzle when it comes to deep retrofits and making our buildings more efficient, together with the shell and other parts of buildings. Here in New York City, where I'm sitting today, we've had some amazing examples of how windows can help with efficiency, including when the Empire State Building did a deep retrofit and replaced each of the windows in that iconic building with super efficient windows. So I think, everyone's trying to figure out how to crack the code on deep retrofits of existing buildings. When it comes to new buildings, there are building code solutions. There are building code solutions for retrofits as well, but it's a little bit more complicated. So again, I think it's an area where cities and states are leading. And I don't want to be too New York City centric, but I do want to point to legislation passed the other year by the New York City Council and signed into law by the mayor, which establishes greenhouse gas emissions limits for large existing buildings. So that is one way to incent deep retrofits. And I think we all have to really band together and replicate and scale up building performance standards for existing buildings across the U.S. and do what we need to do at the city, state, and federal level to support that effort, because buildings are a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions, and we have to crack that nut.
Right. The next question is, how does natural gas efficiency play into this clean energy solutions concept, as many homes and businesses rely on natural gas every day, especially in low-income sectors and yes. So what is your input on this?
Yes, at NRDC, based on our analysis of what we need to do to decarbonize here in the U.S. and in the world, and similar to the results of almost every other decarbonization study, we know that we need to phase out the use of fossil fuels in the U.S. as quickly as possible, and that includes fossil gas. We also need to do that in a way that is equitable and pay close attention to the low-income sector, the LMI sector, and make sure that our policies are putting equity and communities first. And so I think, again, building codes are part of that discussion, and electrification is part of that discussion. We know that we can and must decarbonize buildings, get fossil fuels out of our buildings for health considerations, for climate considerations, for equity considerations, and we need to do it in a smart way. The Energy Efficiency for All Coalition, which NRDC is part of, and the Greenlining Institute put out a report last year on how to do building electrification in an equitable way, and there's some very important recommendations in there. In terms of gas efficiency, that continues to be a very important part of the equation. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support and expand programs like LIHEAP, which engage in weatherization in low-income housing, building shell repairs to optimize efficiency, and we need to be all in that effort today and for the foreseeable future. I think what we have to be careful about is not replacing gas equipment, furnaces, boilers, and the like, in a way that is going to make it easier to continue to use fossil fuels in our buildings, and we really need to go big on building electrification.
Thank you. The next question is, many clean energy employers list lack of qualified or trained workers as a huge barrier. What kinds of workforce training needs, like which occupations, do you see as the most needed to get enough people trained in implementing a clean energy economy? Or where can workforce training providers find more information to connect with clean energy employer skills gaps?
Well, workforce training is a really, really important part of the equation. And just stepping back for a moment, Gina mentioned this, but clean energy jobs prior to the pandemic had been scaling up in a huge way and really became one of the fastest growing parts of the U.S. economy, growing much faster than the fossil fuel sector, with energy efficiency jobs in the lead, as well as renewable energy jobs. NRDC's sister organization, E2, and please go to e2.org if you're not familiar with E2, has done a series of reports prior to the pandemic showing the growing role of clean energy jobs in our economy, and since the pandemic have flagged the really devastating losses for the clean energy economy caused by the pandemic, and what we need to do to get back on track and to make bringing back clean energy jobs be a key part of COVID recovery. On workforce training, I think it's needed throughout, and it's also really an important component of what Gina talked about in making sure that clean energy is equitable. We have to be training workforces in all of our communities, in communities of color, in low-income communities, to make sure that our workforce, our clean energy workforce, looks like America. And I would go to E2's website, and I know many states have workforce training programs, and it's a huge part of the just transition from a fossil fuel economy to a clean energy economy.
All right, then. The next question is the environmental movement for years has intended to be equitable and fall in the concerns of labor and of communities, particularly impacted by environmental damage. While most of us are personally and organizationally experience a spike in our commitment to these ends, what practical tools should we be using to ensure our intentions translate into results?
That's a really important question, and one we're grappling with and thinking about a lot at NRDC. And obviously I can't answer for the environmental movement as a whole, but at NRDC, we are dedicated, and Gina's leadership has really focused on this, in not only becoming an equitable organization, but doing the work that we need to do to become an anti-racist organization. So how are we tackling that? We're doing extensive internal equity training. We have just brought on board a brand new Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. We're engaged in examining our hiring and retention practices so that we can become a much more diverse organization. We're also looking externally at the work that we do and how we can build our work with communities and our work to become anti-racism. So we have a great environmental justice team. We've brought drinking water contamination litigation on behalf of communities in Flint, Michigan, and Newark, New Jersey. And we've also developed a series of initiatives with partners, always in partnership, to try to advance and expand our equity and justice work. So I've mentioned the Energy Efficiency for All Coalition, which is crucial to that effort. There is also a great initiative called SPARK, Strong, Prosperous, and Resilient Communities Challenge, which is also working with partners in cities and communities to support additional climate resilience and health resilience. And just last year, working with environmental justice partners, we came together to form the Equitable and Just National Climate Platform, which is, and I urge you to Google that too. It's a platform where environmental justice groups and kind of big green groups like NRDC have established principles for climate equity and are working together to lift those principles up as we think about what comes next at the federal level. So those are some of the things that we're doing, but I want to be clear, we're just beginning our journey here. So we don't pretend to have succeeded yet. We don't pretend to have all the answers, but with Gina's leadership, we are grappling with these issues and making progress.
All right, thank you, Kit. So the next question is, once the funding is mobilized, how can we accelerate our pace? For reasons we are all familiar with, the energy efficient industry is not the fastest moving.
Well, I think that acceleration is crucial, and I think it's an interesting question. How can we go faster? And I think part of it is about policy. We have to have mandates in place at the federal level, at the state and city level, which require us to meet certain energy efficiency goals. Many states, as you know, have energy efficiency portfolio standards and energy efficiency resource standards that require that each state save certain percentages of energy by particular years. We have to be really committed to establishing those deadlines and meeting those deadlines, and hope and expect the energy efficiency industry to step up to meet those mandates. We also have to make sure that energy efficiency financing is in place so that customers can access those energy efficiency products and pay for them. And I think this is a great question for discussion over the next few days. What role do all of us play in expediting energy efficiency?
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, how can we best integrate energy efficiency with electrification and renewables? What specific strategies should we use?
That's a great question too. And again, I know that will be the topic of many sessions over the next few days on building electrification and on building electrification and equity. And I think we have to stop thinking about these strategies as in competition. We need all of them. Getting carbon out of buildings has all sorts of elements to it. And I think the three big elements are, one, electrification, moving from on-site fossil use to using clean electricity from the grid to heat and cool our buildings. And we need to make the grid much, much cleaner as we go, of course, and we're seeing that happen already. Energy efficiency is a key part of the equation. And energy efficiency and building electrification, in my mind, go together like peanut butter and jelly or any other classic combo that you can think of. If we make our buildings more efficient, the cost of electrifying them goes down, and that's a crucial part of the equation. I already talked about the role of energy efficiency as we move towards building electrification, so I won't repeat all of that. But I think we need to bring all of those strands together, view them as all aiming towards that same goal of getting carbon out of buildings, and get out of the mindset these strategies are in tension with one another. When policies are set up correctly, and when the players in this industry really look towards the future, I think we can see that these are strategies that have to and can proceed together.
Okay, fair enough. The next question is, I am concerned about switching out older appliances or getting an electric vehicle because of the waste and recycling problem that we have. And of course, the embedded carbon in new appliances and vehicles is also a concern. Does the NRDC do any work on concepts like circular economy that might address these issues?
So I think reuse, recycling is really, really important, and NRDC does have a robust recycling program. I think there are other organizations that are thought leaders on these issues, and I would look to them for leadership on how all of these pieces fit together. But I think it's a really important part of the discussion, and again, one that we should engage in, over the next few days while we're together. We know we need to electrify buildings and electrify transportation if we're going to have any hope of meeting our climate goals. And Gina would be mad at me for saying that. We know that we can meet these climate goals, and we know that we are going to. So we know that we have to electrify transportation and buildings, and we have to think about sustainability and how that all fits together.
All right. The next question is, how much of the growth in energy efficiency will be market driven? It's sometimes said that we need an energy efficient industry and not an energy efficient movement.
Well, I guess this is a theme of my answers, but I don't see those two pieces as at all in tension. We need and must have policies at all government levels to incent and require energy efficiency. But we know government can't do it on its own. We need consumers to be educated about energy efficiency, to demand energy efficiency in their homes, businesses, cars, to demand that politicians take action to require energy efficiency. And we know that we need the market, we need to unleash the market to go big on energy efficiency as well. We need a robust market for energy efficiency services, for demand response services, for storage. And I think we're seeing that unfold. And I also think it's a mistake to think about market-based approaches and policy approaches as in tension with each other. The right policies will grow the market, and success in market-driven approaches will help make it easier to put ever more ambitious climate and clean energy policies in place.
Okay. So a slightly different question here. Gina mentioned federal environmental policy rollbacks. To what extent are you seeing direct negative impacts from that?
Well, I think we are definitely seeing negative impacts from the rollbacks and proposed rollbacks. At one level, it's a huge distraction from what we should be doing at the federal level. What we should be doing at the federal level is pushing forward on way more ambitious climate and clean energy visions, agendas, and policies. And instead, we're seeing the federal government attempt to systematically roll back each and every climate and clean energy policy put in place by the past administration, and also going for bedrock environmental laws that have been in place since the 1970s. NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, we're seeing rollbacks there, which will hurt communities in all sorts of ways, and hurt everyone in all sorts of ways. We're seeing assaults on the Clean Air Act. These are bedrock environmental laws, in many cases signed into law by Republican presidents. And instead of having that conversation and doing the work of moving our climate agenda forward, we're instead engaged in this sort of mano a mano fight to stop these rollbacks. So the rollbacks are damaging in and of themselves, and because they have this negative effect on the conversation. As Gina mentioned, NRDC and many environmental partners, many states and state attorney generals are engaged in a mammoth undertaking to challenge as many of these rollbacks as possible in court and to win these cases. And as Gina mentioned, NRDC has won over 90% of the cases that have been resolved thus far. So that doesn't stop the damage caused by even proposing these proposals, these rollbacks, but it does make it easier for the next administration that wants to lead to go back to the hard work of where we need to go in the future. And I'll also add, going back to the theme of communities, cities, and states, we're seeing tremendous progress on climate and clean energy at the state and city level across the U.S. It's no longer just a sort of a bi-coastal thing. We're seeing great climate and clean energy leadership in many, many states. Some 25 states have joined the U.S. Climate Alliance, for instance, states dedicated to staying on track with the Paris goals. So there is reason for hope, even while we continue to fight these dangerous rollbacks in court.
Right. We probably have time for 2 more questions. So here's the first one. California is facing rolling blackouts due to heat waves and an increased demand of energy use. What needs to be done in order to increase resilience in the electric power grid? How does energy efficiency play a role in resilience?
Yeah, energy efficiency and demand response are crucial to meeting that challenge. My colleague, Ralph Cavanna, wrote a blog on the California rollbacks and some of the things that we and policymakers can do to get to a better place. So I recommend that to you. And one thing we need to do is make the grid stronger. There have been proposals over the years, which NRDC and others have supported, to expand the California Independent System Operator to make it easier to share clean energy resources. That's part of the solution. And we have to understand that this is not, we need to take action to solve these problems in California and elsewhere, because one of the cruel ironies here is that climate is already impacting us. Climate change is already impacting us. The climate crisis is causing these heat waves, which make it even more challenging to run the grid, and also have all sorts of human impacts from including premature death and health and pulmonary problems. So we have to solve these problems, and we have to do it in the right way that puts clean energy and grid flexibility first.
Thank you. So the last one here. How can we change the way utility energy efficiency programs operate to incentivize deeper retrofits and interventions that have benefits unrelated to reduced energy use, such as health, safety, and carbon benefits? As a program administrator, it feels like we don't get rewarded for the non-energy benefits in most programs' cost-effectiveness tests at this time.
I think that's a really important problem, and one that we have to tackle. And again, I'm hoping that our discussions over the next few years, over the next few days, hopefully not, it won't take years, will help us resolve that issue. The co-benefits of energy efficiency are immense, as are the co-benefits of solving the climate crisis. And we've been at this together for decades, and we still have cost tests for energy efficiency that in many instances, if not most instances, are too narrow and aren't looking at those broader benefits. So we absolutely need to look at the benefit side of cost-benefit ratios and total resource costs and similar tests, and figure out a way to include those important co-benefits of energy efficiency in the equation, and do whatever it takes to get there, whether it's legislative changes, regulatory changes, rate proceeding litigation, partnerships. I do think it's a really important issue to tackle.
Well, thank you, Kit. That's all the time that we have, but we appreciate your answers, your expertise, and the time that you have provided us here.
Thank you, Diana, and thanks to all for the great dialogue.
All right.